girl. What a beautiful little girl. Yeah, yeah. What's that look about? I know what you want. I know what that look is, and no, you're not jumping up onto my head. We've already done that before, and now it's time to do another vlog. So, hi everybody, Sonic Blue here with Bowsie, and it's time for another episode of Bowsie's Vlogs. And she's gaping. She knows. She knows not to go up there, but she wants to. Look at that gape. She knows. Anyway, I'm going to take everybody back to the beginning of picking out your bearded dragon. And a lot of people have a little bit of difficulty in choosing one that's right for them. And some of them don't even know the first thing about what to look for. So fortunately, I got a lot of tips for you in order to choose your bearded dragon. Now, when you go to the pet store, you're probably going to be faced with about 5 or 6, maybe more, maybe less, bearded dragons in the terrariums. The best way to go about picking one out is to get a good look at all of the bearded dragons that are inside the tank. Make sure they have all their fingers, all their toes, make sure that they have all their limbs, and make sure they have their full tail. You definitely want a full tail. Next, you want to take a look at the health of the bearded dragon. Make sure that they're not lethargic. If they're sleeping, let them lie, let them sleep. If they're awake, best time to pick them out is when they're all awake, and you can test to see their alertness. And the most alert ones are the ones you want to take home, because that's a good sure sign of a healthy baby bearded dragon. Third, you definitely want to get one that acknowledges your presence. Get one that actually stares up at you and watches your every move. And if you move to one side of their tank, their eyes will follow you along, or they'll actually give chase and actually go over to the other side of the tank to meet you there. Those are the ones you want to take, because those are the ones that will acknowledge you the most, that will find the most interest in you as an owner, and one that will grow on you when they get to be about this age or even older. And that is a perfect method of choosing your first bearded dragon. Now you're asking, what else do I pick up with my bearded dragon? Well, I'm very glad you asked me that. A lot of the stuff you don't even have to ask. You just have to. There's some things that you just know instinctively. But for those of you that are unfamiliar with bearded dragon care, while you pick up your bearded dragon, you're going to also need to pick up a sizable tank, enough for them to grow into. Now, you can start them off by putting them in a 20, maybe 30-gallon tank to start them off, but eventually when they grow up to adulthood, the most minimal size tank you want to put them in is 40 gallons. And that's the minimum size tank you want to get for your bearded dragon, because when they reach adulthood and they reach about this size, they're going to need at least 40 gallons of a tank to run around in, because these guys love to glass surf. They love running around, and there will come times when they will need all that room to run around in, especially when they come out of brumation period, because that's when they're going to be the most hyper, the most out of control, and they will need the room. Next thing you're going to need, of course, now that you got a tank, you need UVA and UVB lights. UVAs are their basking lights, and they usually radiate anywhere between 95 to 110 degrees Fahrenheit. UVB rays stimulate the vitamin D intake they're going to need from natural rays like the sun, and the UVB rays simulate that into their tank. So, you're definitely going to need to get one of those and place that on the cooler side of the tank. So you definitely don't want to put them both together, or unless you have one of those fluorescent UVBs, it'll go all the way across the tank. But for the most part, if you got one of those compact ones, it's not really advised that you get them a compact light, but if that's all you can get, then it will work. It's just best to get a fluorescent UVB bulb, especially ones that are made by ZoomEd. Best company that you can rely upon is ZoomEd, and they make or Zilla is a good brand too. If you can't find ZoomEd, Zilla is a good one. But as long as you get the necessary implements that you need, including UVA day and night bulbs, and of course a UVB. Now the night bulbs I've heard mixed comments about, and I'm going to explain what the UVB or UVA night bulb is. Night bulb, of course, is a light that you put on their terrariums when it's night. A lot of them come in red color, but Bearded dragons can actually detect the color red, and some of them will even be disturbed in the middle of the night. They won't be able to sleep that well if there's a bright red light shining in their terrarium. It may disturb their sleep. So you may want to look at something that's maybe a little bit like on the blue side. If they have a blue, like a dark blue or a deep blue, that color they don't really detect as much as they do the red. But if you can find a blue nightlight that radiates the necessary amount of heat for their nighttime, it's probably best to invest in one of those. Or even better, my best recommendation is called a heat emitter. And what it is a ceramic, sort of like, it's like in the shape of a UVA bulb, but it's got a flat surface on the end of it. It goes into a typical dome light or whatever you happen to have for your terrariums. It fits into the same socket, but the flat side is what radiates the heat, and it does so without light, and it lasts a lot longer. I definitely suggest getting one of those. Not only will it be less disturbing for your bearded dragon at night, but it'll also save you a bundle in the long run. It might be a little more expensive to buy, but 5 years. It's got a 5-year life plan, and that to me is a lot better than getting a UVA nightlight that's going to either disturb their sleep or it's going to go out on you after six or so weeks. You definitely want to get something that's long-lasting, and the heat emitter is definitely a good choice. And of course, you're going to need your husbandry, which is what we line the bottom of the terrarium with. You definitely want to stay away from grit, like sand, or crushed walnut. That's definitely something you want to stay away from, because the small pieces of walnut can actually be sharp enough for them to cut themselves on, and also if they ingest some of that, it could cause impaction. And not only that, when it comes out the other end, it might not be too pleasant for them to have to deal with in case they do get some in their system. Fortunately, I've not had much experience with crushed walnut to actually go through any of that with Bowsie, because the moment that I heard that it was bad, I quit using it. So you shouldn't use it either. Stay away from sands or anything gritty. There's especially around babies. If you have a baby bearded dragon, stay away from sand. Even if you get a kit and the sand is included, stay away from it. Don't even use it. Your best bet is to use newspaper or shelf liner. Shelf liner, albeit, is a little bit more like that reptile carpet. You can also use reptile carpet if you want to, but some of the microfibers in the carpet may get stuck to their claws and actually may run the risk of yanking one of their claws out, or if you have a very delicate bearded dragon, one of their toes. You definitely want to watch out when you get reptile carpet. My best recommendation for that is the shelf liner, because not only is it a lot easier on their feet, it's very easy to clean out. When you clean out their terrarium, you just take it out and you replace it with new. The newspaper, after a while, they'll get it wet and it'll saturate and it'll start becoming pulpy. But other than that, newspaper is also a very good alternative, but you got to keep it clean a lot more often than if you use shelf liner. Shelf liner, if you use that, you're basically going to last about a month of use before you have to scrub out the terrarium and replace the old shelf liner with new. If you use newspaper, you're going to have to change that every week. So it just depends on what your availability is, depending upon how often you're going to clean out your lizard's terrariums. But it should always be done no less than once a month. That is definite. And what about you, Bowsie girl? Yeah, it should be almost time for another scrubbing of your terrarium. That's right. I get to change out your shelf liner. Now, the best shelf liner to go with, Walmart has a nice big roll of shelf liner for about $4. And you can't go wrong with that shelf liner that they've got. It comes in a nice big roll, so it'll last you a while. And it's only $4 compared to $10 or so for reptile carpet, or constantly getting bags upon bags of sand that's going to get everywhere and get into their food, get into their water, get all over them. So, I mean, it's a lot cleaner, a lot neater, and a lot safer for your bearded dragon. You can also invest in tiles. They make tiles, like little stepping tiles that you can lay down in the bottom of your terrarium as well. But it's a little bit more difficult to clean, and a lot more time has to be invested in picking up each and every single one of those tiles, soaking them in water, and scrubbing out the terrarium, getting it out of the water, and relaying it back down again. It's just a huge, huge hassle. But stepping tiles is fine if you want to decorate your terrarium with little pieces of it here and there, but it should not enact as a main husbandry unless you have the time to clean each individual one, or just take them all out and soak them, or whatever. But that's the main things that should be going into your terrarium. Decorations is a good thing too. Decorations, you want to get something that, for one thing, you need a basking stick. First and foremost, you have to get a basking stick. Otherwise, they're not going to get the proper temperature that they're going to need, especially as babies, because the UVA bulbs, the heat from the UVAs, may not reach your baby bearded dragon. You want to give them a nice high place that they can climb and bask. So you have to get them a basking stick. Another thing, too, they love to hide. So if you can get them a nice hiding spot, like maybe a hollow half log or even a cave, you can get one of those, place it in the terrariums. They'll crawl into it, they'll hide in it, they'll sleep on top of it. Bowsie, when she had her cave, was always on top of it or on the side of it. She hardly went into it, though, but the crickets sure did go in there, didn't they? Yeah, they sure did. Now, plants. Artificial plants are always best to put in your terrarium. You definitely don't want to put anything living in the terrarium because it could cause parasites, it could attract insects, it could be poisonous for your bearded dragon if they accidentally ate some of the leaves. You definitely don't want to put living plant life in your terrariums for various amounts of reasons. Yeah, go for something that's artificial, but also go with something that isn't going to harm them in any way, and something that's soft enough to where if they touch it by accident, they're not going to get prickled on something sharp. You definitely want to make sure to keep all sharp objects away from your terrarium, especially when it comes to artificial plants. And they do make some sharp little cacti with little thorns that are kind of sharp when you poke at them. And I didn't get any of those because I was kind of afraid that Bowsie might leap onto it in the wrong way and actually get poked in the stomach by one of those things, and I just didn't want to have that risk. So what I did was I got some desert plants that are very soft to the touch, very decorative, and she loves them, and they worked out great. Okay, definitely want to get them a food bowl, of course. What are you going to put the food in? You got to get them a food bowl. And a water dish. The water dish, when they're babies, doesn't have to be that deep. But when they get into adulthood, it's best to get them a nice big lagoon size that they can actually jump into, they can swim around in. And Bowsie loves her lagoon. I mean, she absolutely adores it. We got her a nice big water type lagoon, and you'll see them in your pet stores. Petco has them, PetSmart has them. We got ours at PetSmart, and Bowsie's loved the heck out of it. At times when you replace their water, and you definitely want to replace their water with filtered water, not tap water, because tap water, it may contain some certain chemicals that might be harmful to your bearded dragon. So you always want to make sure to give them filtered water, or spring water, or something that's natural, something that doesn't come out of the tap that might have chemicals in it. You definitely want to look out for your little Beardie. And once you replace their water and put it in their water lagoon, I like to call it, because it's sizable enough to be considered a lagoon, and they like to swim in it. But once you replace the water in that thing, don't be surprised your bearded dragon turns the bottom of your terrarium into a swamp. Bowsie does this all the time. And that shelf liner is absolutely perfect for this purpose. So if you have an adult bearded dragon, get the shelf liner. It'll do you a wonder of good. It'll also be cheaper in the long run, and it's not going to be harmful for your bearded dragon. Now, those are the basics of getting your bearded dragon, and a lot of those things are essential in including with your bearded dragon. So if you bring a bearded dragon home, you're also going to have to invest in a lot of other things. So it's not just the price of the bearded dragon you're going to be investing in, but also all the equipment, all the accessories, all of the things that are necessary for keeping your bearded dragon healthy, happy, and living a long time. You definitely want to get the basics. At the very least, you have to have the basics. You have to have the UVA day and night, or the heat emitter is an even better choice. And the UVB, food bowl, water bowl, basking stick is a must, and a hiding place is definitely a bonus. Plus some plants if you want to decorate it, and maybe some tile to decorate that. Some of the things, though, aren't really that necessary. Like if you see the reptile hammocks, they love sleeping in hammocks. Bowsie loves sleeping pretty much anywhere. She loves soft things. She loves her pillows. But she's never really had the Beardie hammock, or some of you iguana owners might have a hammock. It's not a necessary item, but lizards, especially bearded dragons, will tend to sleep in one of those hammocks if you happen to have one. But it's not necessary. I mean, it's not a needed item. But you can get one if you wish, and bearded dragons especially will love the heck out of them. Otherwise, they'll sleep on their basking stick, or they'll sleep on their cave, or their hollow log, or whatever you happen to have in the cooler part of their terrariums. But just a lot of the accessories that can go along with your terrarium. A lot of extra things. You definitely want to, have a separate tank for your bearded dragon's live food. Now, mealworms and waxworms, you don't need any of that. You just need a refrigerator. Superworms usually come in a plastic container, and they can stay in that container, or you can put them all, if you get a lot of them in bulk, you can put them in a 10-gallon tank and they'll do just fine. Dubia roaches, especially if you get a lot of dubias, since they're bigger in size than most cockroaches are, they are going to need their own tank. So a 10-gallon tank will hold a good 25 or 50 or so very comfortably. Crickets, usually they sell a cricket keeper. That is just right for crickets. They have the tubes that go into it, and they love to go up and hide in those tubes, which makes it easier to distribute into your bearded dragon's terrarium. Basically, when I had my cricket keeper, there were 4 tubes, 2 on either side. And once we got the crickets home, they would eat, then they would drink, then they would go up into those tubes, and they would sleep, and they would, hang out there all the time. And all you need to do really is just pick up one of the tubes and just kind of tap a few of them off into the calcium shaker, shake them up and get them dusted good with calcium, and then feed it to them, and they just go crazy for them. And it just makes it a lot easier to feed that way than if you got them just in a straight tank, and you'd have to put like eggshell carton in with the crickets, and so you have to knock a few of them out, and it just makes it a lot easier that way. No fuss, no muss, But that's definite for keeping any live foods. Now, if you're going to keep crickets, you definitely need to get a keeper, whether it's a 10-gallon tank or whether it's a cricket keeper made by Zilla or by ZooMed. I believe ZooMed makes them more common. Whether it's a tank or whether it's a cricket keeper, you definitely want to get food and drink for the crickets. Now, most pet stores do sell cricket food and cricket water, which come in little gel pastes. You put them in a food bowl, and instead of giving them water, because they can drown in water, but they tend to drink from these little gel-like crystal little thingies that you put in a water dish, and they drink from that. And that's it's a surefire way that your crickets aren't going to drown themselves when they take a drink. And the food, basically what we call that is gut loading your crickets. And the food you give your crickets, which most foods that come from pet stores already have the nutrients that bearded dragons are going to need, and crickets love to eat. So it's a win-win in any situation, because once the cricket eats the food and the bearded dragon eats the cricket, it's going to ingest not only the cricket, not only the proteins from the cricket, but also the foods that the cricket was eating, plus the vitamins and the minerals that you give them in the cricket food. So that's what we call gut loading a cricket. So if you hear that term gut loading, that's what that means. You put nutrients into the food before it goes to the bearded dragon. So, and Bowsie's looking at me like, why are you talking about crickets at a time like this? I'm not hungry. I know you're not hungry, baby. But I'm just informing all of the new bearded dragon owners and get them prepared into what to expect when you bring your bearded dragon home. And a lot of people aren't really all that educated on, what implements you're going to need as an essential in keeping the bearded dragon. So this episode is dedicated to those people who don't know the first thing about picking out a bearded dragon, to help you sort of pick one out that's right for you, but not only that, help you become more prepared in bringing one home, and what you're going to look at in the ways of accessories to bring home along with the bearded dragon. So if you follow all of those guidelines and all of those items, make yourself a little checklist, and when you go in to the pet store, remember all of those items need to come with the bearded dragon. And if you need any help, that's what the cashiers and all the people at the pet store are there to help you with. If they know a lot about reptiles, and some of them are required to know about reptile care, they will help guide you on your way and letting you know what exactly you need to bring home along with your bearded dragon. Now it's anecdote time. I get to tell you some anecdotes. I want to tell you about this very first day that we brought Bowsie home, and all of the precautions were followed. We did pick up a bearded dragon kit, which was on sale. It was a 30-gallon tank, all the accessories, the dome lights, the UVAs, the UVB. All of that stuff came with it, and of course Reptisand, which we had to put right away because we didn't have any other husbandry, and we did not have any newspapers either. I mean, we really didn't. So I had to take a chance with the sand, and then I heard about it possibly causing impaction, but I didn't even get that far before I realized that she had sand all over the place, and we decided to get something a lot easier to keep clean, and we got it into the reptile carpet, which we never had any problem with the reptile carpet at all whatsoever, but it's still something to bear in mind that some of the fibers may get caught in their claws, and it may be difficult for them to get out of it, basically. So you definitely want to invest in something a lot easier on their feet, and shelf liner and newspaper are two of the best husbandries you can put in your terrarium. But that's beside the point. I want to tell you about the anecdote. So we were at the pet store, and my roommate wanted to get fish. And I said, we should get a bearded dragon or a lizard of any kind, because you can't really take a fish out of the tank and pet it and hold it and let it cuddle with you and let it do all this other stuff. You can't really let it do that. And he kind of agreed. He said, yeah, fish are interesting to look at, but you can't really do much with them, just feed them and watch them. With a bearded dragon, though, you're investing in not just a pet, but also a companion, one who shares a very strong bond with their owners. And he agreed, and he says, well, we should look into one. And he could not resist. When he saw those baby bearded dragons, he was at the same level I was, and we were just ogling over all of them. And so I was looking inside the tank, and there were about 4 baby bearded dragons there. And Bowsie was the biggest one. So she might have been there at least, maybe a week longer than the other ones, and maybe some of the other ones weren't there long enough, because they looked to be about younger than the required 6 weeks of age. I don't know if they were or not, but it's just something I'm speculating, because Bowsie either was like the most healthiest one, or she's been there the longest. I really don't know. But she was at least 6 weeks old when we brought her home, so I kind of set her birth date at around October the 9th, October 9th or October 6th. October 6th is when I think it was. It was October 6th was your birthday, which was about the time that she would have been born. And so I was looking inside the terrarium at like four other bearded dragons that were in there, little baby ones, and they were all so cute. One of them just stood out amongst the crowd, basically, and she was in one of her basking sticks, and she was staring straight at me. And there were others that were, kind of mingling with each other, not even paying attention to me. Bowsie was practically one of the 2 that was paying attention to me. And when I moved, she moved her head. And wherever I went to, her eyes followed. And I knew that was the one for me. So I selected that one. Pet store attendant came out. I kept a good eye on her to make sure I didn't lose sight on her. Yeah, she's smiling. Look at that. She's gaping. She remembers. Or do you remember that? I don't know. You were really little. So she saw me from the terrarium, and she knew that that I was the one that was going to take care of her, and I knew that was the one that was right for me. So I selected her, and the attendant came out and asked if I wanted to hold it first, make sure it was the one I wanted. And I held it, and she practically just stared up at me with those eyes that just practically fell in love with me at first sight. And I had the same eyes for her. So it was basically love at first sight. And so I said, yes, this is the one I want. And I took her home. They put her in one of those little tiny plastic things with the holes punched in top, And I was just holding her and waiting for my roommate to finish up, looking at whatever he was looking at. And we had gotten all of the accessories, all of the things she needed. We came home, rapidly set everything up. We had to get the UVAs heated up so we can get the terrarium up to a certain temperature, because it was getting towards the autumn, or deeper into the autumn, I should say. It was already autumn, but it was getting deeper into the autumn, so we didn't want her to get too cold, so I had her, kind of bundled up to keep her warm. And we set her up, the terrarium, turned the light on, let it set for about, 15 minutes, 20 minutes to get some heat generated, and then we put her inside of it, and we let her just, explore her new world, and that's when she started digging around in the sand, and she was very, very cute. You were a very cute baby. Very explorative, too. And one other thing, too, before I close. When you bring your bearded dragon home for the very first time, you definitely want to give it its space first. Sometimes you may get a bearded dragon that may not be used to you right away and may need a little time to get used to its new surroundings, because you just removed it from its brothers and sisters and now it's spending for the first time alone in its own terrarium. So you definitely want to give them some time to adapt. They're in a bigger tank now, they're in a different place now, everything is different to them, so you definitely want to give them their space. With Bowsie, she wasn't very temperamental. Especially as a baby, she was not temperamental. In fact, she got used to her surroundings right away, and the very next day she was ready to be taken out, being held. She jumped right into my hand when I approached the next day to give her her food. She wanted to be held. She wanted to be out of there and explore, the world with me. And usually, though, bearded dragons mostly are not going to be that explorative. They're not going to be that eager to get out of the tank to be with their owners until they've gotten used to their surroundings first. So you definitely, if you have a moody bearded dragon, and some of them can be temperamental, especially when they're babies, you definitely want to give them their space. And if they come to you, that is the right time to take them out, let them explore, take them out for about no later than an hour, because they really do need to rely on that heat. They need to rely on getting the nutrients they need from their UVAs and the UVBs, and especially their food. When is it a good time to take a bearded dragon out of their terrarium after they eat? Give them about 3 to 4 hours to digest their food first, because bearded dragons are cold-blooded creatures, and so they rely on the heat from their UVAs and the UVBs in order to digest their foods. Now, they cannot digest if they're too cold. The food will just sit there, and it could cause a lot of internal damages to their system, and not only that, but make them very ill. Now, if they have the adequate heat that they need to digest their food, give them about 3 to 4 hours after feeding time before you take them out of the terrarium. And this goes the same for babies and adults. So you definitely want to give them time to digest their food first, and 3 to 4 hours will do just that, just nicely. And then you can have them out. As babies, you definitely want to handle them, but you want to handle them in spurts. No later than an hour per interval. And so you put them back, let them alone for about 2-3 hours in between holding them and handling them. And with adults, you can leave them out a lot longer, because they really don't need to rely on the heat as much as babies do because of their development, because they're already developed, they're adults. And so you can take them out a lot longer. You can take them out for 5-6 hours. It just depends on the environment you keep in the room. Always keep your room at least room temperature 70-73 degrees is moderate, 75 is good. If you keep your room temperature at about 73 to 75 degrees, it will provide an adequate environment for your bearded dragon, whether they're in their terrarium or out of their terrarium. But you definitely don't want to go below 70 degrees. That is a no-no in keeping a bearded dragon or any reptile that relies on heat, especially desert reptiles, and bearded dragons are desert reptiles. So they require to be in an environment that is around 95 to 110 degrees by default. Now, they can be in a cooler environment, but as long as the temperature does not drop below 70. So if you keep your room temperature at about 73 to 75, especially when you got a bearded dragon in the same room, that would be very ideal temperature for the bearded dragon. So, another tip for you. I think that's about it in preparing for your bearded dragon, and hopefully everybody who is interested in getting a bearded dragon will have understood the necessary precautions and necessary measures and procedures in getting a bearded dragon and getting all the necessary implements that you need in order to keep them safe, happy, and healthy. So follow those simple tips, and you will have a very happy bearded dragon, and one that will create a faster bond with you than with anybody else. So until next time, this is Sonic Blue, and this is Bowsie, the happy little bearded dragon girl, saying good luck out there in getting your bearded dragon home, and know exactly what to look for before you even think about choosing a bearded dragon. Know what to look for, and note the telltale signs of a healthy bearded dragon before you even get it picked out. Now, you definitely want one that is healthy, one that is not lethargic, not sleeping, and if you see it holding its head up toward the light, that's a sign of health. And it's also best to get one that is very aware of your presence. That's the one that is right for you. So until next time, this is Sonic Blue, this is Bowsie, and next time on Bowsie's Vlogs, I'm going to tell you about some of the behaviors of the bearded dragon, and why a lot of people are wondering, what is up with my bearded dragon? Those will all be revealed next episode of Bowsie's Vlogs. So until next time, say bye-bye, Bowsie. Say bye-bye, Bowsie, girl. Want to give everyone a gape? Just for a laugh, you want to give everyone a gape? Remember, if you have any questions on what your bearded dragon is going through, chances are I know what they're going through, or I've been through it myself. But if you have any questions about bearded dragon care, send them to me. I'll be sure to get them answered. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
They smell of shite jobs and the minimum